Good afternoon, everyone, and I'm delighted to be here and delighted to have an opportunity to speak before you. I'm Lester Wilson. I'm a professor of history at Long Island University and the director of the United Nations Graduate Certificate Program at Long Island University. The certificate is part of a program for a master's degree in political science or social science or public administration. And our students come from a variety of backgrounds. I think most of you have my handout, do you? So you have some idea where the students might be coming from that are participating in the project, which I'll be talking about presently. I'm also chair of the Executive Committee's Outreach Subcommittee, and so much of what I'll be talking about this afternoon has to do with outreach and the Executive Committee as well. I'm the director also of the Executive Committee's Central America Project, which I'll discuss further on, and co-editor of the NGO Reporter, which I want to also say a few words about. But to go on I'd like to discuss two initiatives of the Executive Committee. One is its regional NGO coordinators. This was something that was a project that was begun back in 2006, and individuals are selected from around the world to work with us as what we call them NGO regional coordinators or regional NGO coordinators. And we have 6 now so far, one from Egypt, Chile, Nigeria, Mexico, Fiji, and eventually, and very soon we'll have one from Central America. And these representatives support NGO activities in the various regions where they're located, and one of their functions is to encourage regional NGOs to associate with DPI. And this is something that our committee is working in collaboration with NGO relations to foster, to get more and more NGOs outside of, or overseas, shall we say, connected up and associated with DPI, and that's one of the responsibilities of these coordinators. They also are asked to meet with various academics, the media, youth, and mobilize support for UN-related programs in their areas. Oftentimes that involves working with the local UNIC or with the local resident coordinator, trying to foster more and more interest in the UN and participation with the UN from these areas. Periodically, these individuals are asked to send us reports about what they're doing, and we communicate back with them in kind. And finally, what we really are quite interested in doing with them is having them come to the conference, the yearly conference. And this is going to be a very important occasion in August, this conference in New York City, where we hope to get them together as a group and to make a presentation before the larger NGO community. I think it will be enormously important for them and will be an enormous attraction at the conference as well. Somehow or other, we're going to have to find the wherewithal to get some of them to come to New York, because Fiji is a long ways away to get someone to New York. I also like to now turn to the Central America Project, which I believe you have in front of you at the moment, and that goes back to 2007 when the Executive Committee created in February 2007, as I say here, with the intention of increasing the small representation of Central American NGOs. It created this project whereby Long Island University students would travel to Central American countries and with the mission of trying to recruit NGOs to associate with DPI. And I think some of you mentioned that before. How do you go about getting NGOs to associate. Well, when we first started, I just thought that, well, we'll just get on a plane and go to Costa Rica, and at the airport, we'll look around and start recruiting. It didn't work that way. If I had done that, we would have been back to New York on the return flight. But we got eventually an awful lot of cooperation and support from various UN officials. In Costa Rica, we got the local resident coordinator. In most of these countries, the resident coordinator was very, very important. In Panama, the local UNIC office was very important. But in the rest of Central America, there were no UNIC offices, and so we dealt uniquely with the resident coordinator. And so you see that we've gone to all of these various countries, and in June we hope to go to Nicaragua, as the completion of all the Central American countries, and then I think we'll begin to return and go back and revisit, and to try to get more and more of the NGOs that we've met to associate with DPI. Prior to our visit to one of these countries, the students take a course at the university on NGOs and civil society. And then that segues into this trip to Central America, which is also given university credit for. However, the students do pay for this trip themselves. The high point of our visit to one of these Central American countries is a breakfast where we invite NGOs to come and hear our presentation. We have a PowerPoint and what have you. And it's a breakfast because in Central America, that's the way they do business, apparently. They all go to work after the breakfast, and they all come to the breakfast. It's a whole thing. We didn't know that this is what was done, but we caught on quite quickly. And so we have this breakfast, and the resident coordinator, or the UNIC office, sends me a list of NGOs who might be interested to New York. And I send a letter of invitation to each of these NGOs personally in Spanish on executive committee stationery, inviting each of these NGOs to come to this breakfast. And so maybe 50 to 60 NGOs attend the breakfast, and we make this presentation of DPI and why it's important to become part of the global civil society community. And then that's the first part. That's followed up by a whole series of visits to individual NGOs that have been recommended by the resident coordinator or by the UNIC. And so we spend the rest of the week there visiting NGOs, also trying to recruit them as well, but where the students get an enormous gain enormous insight into NGOs in developing countries. And I remember one of the most startling one that I participated in was when we went to Guatemala. The first visit was in a cemetery, and we all got on the little bus that we hired and tootled off to the cemetery. And the closer we got, the more alarmed I became. Why are they taking us to this place? And so we went inside of a kind of shed, and inside the shed, people were scraping bones. It was a forensic NGO, and they were scraping bones of the people who had been killed during the violence of the past decades, and they were trying to identify some of the people who were there, and you could see them. We walked over and we could see the bones, the skulls, everything. It was really quite impressive. And this is one of the few organizations in all of South America. There was one in Chile, I believe, and one in Argentina, and then there was the one we visited in Guatemala. It was really quite startling. Well, as I said, The agenda for us is really prepared by the resident coordinator, and we've gone to all of these various countries, and this year we were able to recruit about 25 NGOs from Guatemala and Costa Rica, and that's added to another series of NGOs from Honduras and from Panama, and we were just in El Salvador, and there were about 15 Salvadoran NGOs in the works for association, and who knows what we'll do in Nicaragua. But the whole idea is to get a community of NGOs from Central America and these NGOs, we would like them to know one another, because when we have the breakfast, the guests at the breakfast don't know one another. They're all NGOs, and they're all working in the same city, but they really do not know one another because they're doing different things. And so a lot of what takes place in the breakfast is simply networking between the people who are there, with us just sort of watching what's going on. So that's the goal that I think that we're trying to do with through the executive committee for DPI through Long Island University. But now I think that we can go beyond that and try to recruit other universities and other youth groups to do similar things. So that's the next project, which I've already started discussing that with Ms. Good, wherever she is, if she's still in the room. Yes. So that's the next step to go beyond that, to get other youth groups, because it's a fascinating project. Just one other thing I'd like to say, do all of you get the NGO reporter? Does anyone not get it? Are you all associated, right? It's supposedly sent to everyone who is associated. Well, if you're not, I'd like to please give me your emails, because that's going to be, I hope, a very good vehicle for communicating with NGOs outside of headquarters. And one of the things that we're trying to do with the NGO reporter is to have translations in various languages. And so you'll see that if you get a copy of it, some of the articles are in 4 or 5 different languages. Not all, but some of them are. And that's what we hope to do, to be able to communicate more and more with non-English speaking NGOs. And so I thank you very much. And if you have any questions, here I am. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor.